Alrighty. Today we are going to be reviewing a movie from way back in 1994, a year after I was born. So there you go. Now you should, well, a year, yeah, no, a year after I was born. I don't know the exact release date, but this is a quite a longer movie actually. 3 hours and 11 minutes. It says here. I think it was 3:10 was the showtime on Netflix, is what it said. So I don't know what they. I guess maybe it was actually 3 hours and 11 minutes when it came out to the end, but anyhow. So this movie is starring Kevin Costner, Dennis Quaid, Gene Hackman, David Andrews, Lindsay Ashby, Jeff Fahey, Mark Harmon, Michael Madsen, Catherine O'Hara, Bill Pullman, Isabella Rossellini, I want to say. Who else was in this? Oh, I guess Jo Beth Williams. I'm trying to remember all the names of the wives. I think that might have been pretty much it as far as. Oh, and Annabeth Gish was Kevin Costner's character's first wife, I do believe, and then he was with a much younger girl. Oh, and Tia Leone was also in this. And who else? There's got to be some other ones maybe back here further. So this was a Western movie because I watched it last Wednesday while I had a few days off of work. I had original plans to go see Iron Maiden, but then those kind of fell through due to unforeseen circumstances. So it is what it is. Unfortunately, didn't get to go see them a second time, but you don't get to do everything. You don't get to do everything you want to do. Sometimes that's just the way it is. And I'm hoping that I can at least make it to one show in December this year. Well, I guess we'll see. Hopefully the weather isn't too crazy this year like it was last year. It seems to kind of be the weather the last couple of years. It kind of seems to be like it dies down and then all of a sudden we get this huge dumping of snow and then you literally can't go anywhere, which sucks. But so unfortunately, so hopefully that doesn't happen this year like it did last year with the winter the way it was, because I would like to go to at least one show. I mean, even if I have to take 2 trains up to get there. I guess it is what it is. Maybe have to stay the night in a hotel or something. We'll see how it all plays out. So Kevin Costner was playing Wyatt Earp and he lives on this farm, I guess, with his father, and his father was Nicholas Earp, and then he has, I believe it was 3 brothers. Yeah, Morgan Earp. Was James Earp one of his brothers? It must have been. So it must have been James, Morgan, and Virgil were his brothers, I do believe. Because I don't think there's any other guys with the last name Earp on here. Yeah, so I'm assuming those were his 3 brothers. So there was 4 of them in total. And now when he was a kid, he wanted to serve in the war, or serve as a military man. And then when his brothers come home and one of them is seriously injured, I think he might be kind of redeciding that decision, but at the same time, he still kind of wants to go and fight with his older brothers. But then I think when they have to move again and they go to this new town and he sees this guy get gunned down, these couple of guys get gunned down by one another outside of this bar. I think that was maybe when he decided to change his ways, and he just he makes the decision not to choose violence or even carry a gun, I think, at one point. And eventually he loses his first wife, unfortunately, to typhoid when she was pregnant, and his first wife's name was where is she? She's down here somewhere. Was Urilla. So he loses Urilla to typhoid, and then I believe he travels back to the town he was in before. So I guess he... Okay, so he goes from where he was to Wichita. I think that was the first stop. And when he gets to Wichita, he becomes a... I believe he becomes a deputy in Wichita. Now, that might be further along in the story, but I believe he becomes a deputy first. So, after losing his first wife, obviously, he's pretty much kind of goes on like a 2-year stint of just being depressed and drinking a lot and so on and so forth, and then he ends up kind of... The character development in this is really good. So, you can kind of see how he changes his ways. Now he's got a gun, and he starts pulling it on people and telling them to drop their gun belts, and he just takes their weapons with him because I guess he's known as one of the best shooters in those parts, so nobody really wants to take him on because they fear that they will just end up dead because obviously he's a better gunslinger than they are, right? So he becomes a deputy in Wichita, and obviously the marshal loves him for everything that he takes care of. And then we go to Dodge City, where he eventually becomes a marshal, and him and his brothers end up, I think, they end up working together. So I think he has his brothers as deputies, basically, and a couple of his friends, obviously. And then when he goes to Tombstone, he leaves Dodge City in the hands of one of his buddies, and unfortunately, I think his friend ends up getting killed because has this problem with these two, yeah, I guess, well, rival families and I guess rival gangs, I suppose. He definitely makes enemies in this movie, that's for sure. Now, I wish I could remember the two other family names that he was fighting. And he becomes best friends with this guy, Doc Hollywood, played by Dennis Quaid. And yeah, so he becomes best friends with this notorious gangster, basically, in the West, Doc Hollywood. And then he meets, I believe, who was his second wife? Who was his second wife played by? No, it wasn't Catherine O'Hara. I'm trying to think of who his second wife was played by. Was it? No, it wasn't Bessie. I don't think. What was his second wife's name? Good Lord. I'm trying to think. Man, there's got to be a photo of them together, I would think. So his second wife was... That's funny. It's funny that there's no photo of them together somehow. You would think there would be, but there's a photo of him and his third wife together. And their third, I guess, love interest in the movie, at least. Okay, so that's his first wife that he gets married to in that photo. And yeah, I just don't see his second wife in here at all. And I can't for the life of me remember her name for some reason, which seems weird that I wouldn't know her name, or wouldn't be able to remember her name. But sometimes names just slip my mind completely, so yeah, forgive me for that. It happens, even though I didn't see this movie that long ago, only on Wednesday. Was it... I'm really trying to think here, because she was a pretty big part of it. I don't think it was Bessie. And it wasn't Allie, because she was one of the other dude's wives. But maybe his second wife didn't take his name. That seems kind of weird that she wouldn't. Was it Maddie? It might have been Maddie. I'm really trying to remember. Sorry guys that I can't remember that. But anyway, so his second wife, I believe, ends up trying to kill herself basically by drinking, I don't know, some sort of medicine, overdosing on some sort of medicine. And yeah, right, I was saying that he becomes best friends with this notorious gangster Doc Hollywood, and that obviously gets him into more trouble because he's a marshal, so he shouldn't be playing both sides of the law, right? He shouldn't be trying to be a lawman and an outlaw at the same time. And then when these other two gangs end up, I think, basically kind of combining as one, and they have a whole bunch of people in both their crews, so obviously they are coming after Wyatt after a certain amount of time because they want to take him out because he's making all these rules as he goes along, sort of thing, as to what they can and can't do, and eventually he kills a bunch of their crew, and so they come after him in retaliation and end up killing, they end up killing his youngest brother. So that's when he starts to go after them, because I believe he's back in Dodge City at this point. So then he goes back to Tombstone again, and there's this big battle scene at the end of the movie. Well, I shouldn't really say battle scene, but the scene where he just absolutely just takes out the entire crew of them. And then he kind of just moves on after that to the gold rush. And this kid runs into him and tells him about how he saved, I guess, his dad years earlier. So kind of crazy to think. And I guess this must have been based on a true story, because it says here in one of the little blurbs about it on IMDb that it was about the movie shows us good times and bad times are one of the West's most famous individuals. So, interesting. So I guess it must have been based on a true story, even though it didn't say that at the beginning of the movie, which is kind of weird why it wouldn't, but it must be loosely based on a true story, maybe, or maybe it actually is based on a true story, because I guess at the end of the movie, they kind of tell you a little bit about him and his last wife living out their lives together, and obviously he is super protective of her and just doesn't care about his second wife at this point anymore. So, yeah, the third love interest of his was played by Joanna Going, played Josie Marcus. So yeah, she was, yeah, I don't even know what the right term these days would be, but back then they called them whores. And obviously his second wife isn't very happy that he ends up falling in love with her. And I guess they really didn't like her because she was Jewish. So not only there was many reasons wrong with why they didn't like her, and I mean Josie didn't like his second wife either, and they didn't get along. Clearly, obviously, because his second wife was just rude and yeah. I mean, you shouldn't cheat, but oh my God, they just all treated her like utter shit. So just because of the way she was, I guess. Which didn't make a whole lot of sense because, yeah, I'm pretty sure, if I remember, no, I don't think his second wife, I don't even remember how he met his second wife, to be completely honest with you. But anyway, yeah, he ends up killing all the gang members that go after his brother, and obviously he's supposed to be brought in by this other guy, but they never end up catching him, so, and then he just disappears and lives out the rest of his life with his wife, and I'm assuming they made some money on the gold rush. So yeah, really good story. Highly recommend watching this movie. It's on Netflix right now, or at least it is when I'm doing this review, because I don't know when this is going to come out, because again, backlog of content, but that will be explained in another video before you even see this one, so I'm not going to ramble on about that too long. But yeah, I didn't even really recognize Dennis Quaid in the beginning of this movie until I heard his voice. His voice kind of gives him away, but he was like super skinny in this movie, and I guess that makes a little bit of sense because he was slowly dying from, what did he have? damn it, I had it in my head a couple days ago, and now I can't remember what it was that he had, but he was dying. So he kind of had a death wish himself anyway, and he was hoping to die in a kind of like a blaze of glory. So he was always trying to pick a fight with somebody. Uh, and I don't, does he end up dying in the end? I think he gets shot, but I don't remember him. I don't think I remember him dying, but maybe he does. He must at some point. I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to remember if he does die or not. But this was a really good movie, so I might have to go back and watch it again just for my own benefit. But anyhow, yeah, I gave this movie before I sign off. I gave this movie an 8 out of 10 because it was close, but it wasn't it wasn't a 9 or a 10. So I gave it an 8 out of 10, and it got a 6.7 out of 10 on IMDb. So a little lower on the rating scale, apparently what everybody else thought, but I thought it was really good. And it didn't really seem like it was that old of a movie. Like now maybe it's been remastered a few times, obviously, over the years because it's from the 90s. But yeah, it didn't really seem like, it kind of seemed like a modern Western, even though it was already, what would it be, 2004, 2014. So it's almost 30 years old. It's 28, it's a 28-year-old movie. Wow, so hard to, jeez, crazy to think about that it's that old already. But yeah, I guess I will see you guys in the next review. Bye bye for now.